Hello and welcome back to IELTS with Will. Today we're going to look at two specific kinds of grammar that you can use for your topic sentences in your body paragraphs in Task 2 of the writing. So let's go. So in Task 2 essays, we write at least 4 paragraphs. So the first paragraph is the introduction. The second paragraph is a body paragraph. The third is another body paragraph, and the last one is a conclusion. So what we're looking at today are those body paragraphs in the middle. And specifically what we're looking at in these body paragraphs is the very first sentence, and that very first sentence is called a topic sentence. So this topic sentence should make your main point immediately and clearly. And while you do that, you want to use good grammar that will get you better marks. So that good grammar is what we're looking at today, and the first one I'm going to suggest is inversion, and the second one is called cleft sentences. So both of these can be used throughout your writing, but are particularly effective in your topic sentences. And what are they used for? They're used for emphasis. So you make your point strongly using this kind of grammatical structure. So let's look at inversion first. Now, inversion is quite challenging, quite difficult to use. Therefore, it's a good one to use if you can do it correctly. So let's have a look. So in this, we put the auxiliary verb or the modal verb before the subject. So we can look at how this is done. So let's look at normal word order and then look at inversion, inverted word order. And keep in mind that inverted word order actually looks like a question. So the normal word order, people rarely understand how serious the issue is. So that's a normal statement. You've got a subject, an adverb, then a verb. But we want to use inversion. So this is what inversion looks like. And look at the word order. Rarely do people understand how serious the issue is. So you see here, now the sentence starts with the adverb, and the word order after that looks like a question. Do people understand? But it's not a question. So rarely do people understand how serious the issue is. So this emphasizes and stresses your main point. To phrase it like a question, but you don't write it like a question, there's no question mark. And when I read it, it doesn't sound like a question, it's a statement. So here's a basic explanation of inversion. So you say in a statement, I talk, that's normal. But inversion, we would say, do I talk? You drive would become, do you drive? She is crazy becomes, is she crazy? Scientists researched becomes, did scientists research? And as we saw in our first example, before this you use an adverb. So here are some of the adverbs commonly used in inversion. For example, rarely. Rarely do governments take immediate action. Do governments take? Sounds like a question, but it isn't. Not only, but also. Not only does social media connect, but it also isolates. Never. Never have I seen such a dramatic change. So it stresses and emphasizes. Hardly, scarcely, and barely. Let's use hardly. Hardly had the policy been introduced when protests began. Seldom. Seldom do people realize the long-term impact. Only after or only when? Only after years of research did scientists understand the virus. And no sooner had he arrived than the meeting started. So it's phrased like a question, but it isn't a question, it's emphasis. Back to our basic examples. So we had I talk becoming do I talk. You drive, do you drive? She's crazy, is she crazy? Scientists researched, did scientists research? So now let's look at the adverb or the adverbial phrases. Not only do I talk, but not only do you drive, but not only is she crazy, but and not only did scientists research, but so it begins to take shape as inversion. We can also do it with present perfect. I have eaten would become have I eaten, and that would become seldom have I eaten. I have seen becomes have I seen, seldom have I seen. So remember, there's no question mark. It's phrased like a question, but it isn't a question, so it's a statement. Now let's look at some topics. Here's the ubiquitous environment topic. Question. Many people think that global environmental problems should be dealt with internationally rather than domestically. Do you agree or disagree? You want to start your body paragraph with a very strong point. So the first body paragraph could begin like this. Not until recent decades have nations truly realized the extent to which environmental degradation transcends national borders. So that's a very strong answer, as you can see from the vocabulary, but the grammar is inversion, and that's because it's a higher level. Crime and punishment. Some people believe the best way to reduce crime is to give longer prison sentences. Others think that there are better ways to reduce crime. Discuss both sides, give your opinion. So the first body paragraph could begin with a topic sentence like this. Rarely do extended prison sentences result in long-term reductions in reoffending rates. So rarely do they result. More examples. So it's often used after negative or limited adverbs, as we've seen, and it's good for this formal writing. Rarely do young people today spend time away from screens and digital devices. Rarely do. Not only does online learning offer flexibility, but it also provides access to a wider range of resources. Seldom have governments acted quickly enough in response to climate emergencies. Only when unemployment rates began to rise did the government consider policy reform. And here's some band 5 sentences with approximately band 7 using inversion. Here we go. Band 5, people rarely think about how much energy they use. So the band 7 could look like this. Rarely do people think about how much energy they use. The government never admits its mistakes. Never does the government admit its mistakes. People only realize the value of nature when it's gone. Only when it is gone do people realize its value. The law was changed only after a serious accident. Only after a serious accident was the law changed. The city had hardly recovered from the flood when another storm hit. Hardly had the city recovered from the flood when another storm hit, and the minister not only promised reform but also refused to resign. Not only did the minister promise reform, but he also refused to resign. And you can see this last example, not only but also can be used two different ways. So this is inversion. It's quite challenging to use, but because of that, if you can use even one sentence correctly, and most importantly to make that main point, it will get you good marks. Okay, one more grammatical structure that is useful for topic sentences, and it's good for stress and emphasis. That's cleft sentences. So what is a cleft sentence? Well, it's another way of emphasizing your point, and it is used by dividing a sentence that is a normal sentence into two clauses. So let's have a look. It's better to look at examples. So here are some normal sentences and some cleft variations. Technology improves communication. Very straightforward. Cleft sentence. It is technology That improves communication. So when you do this, it stresses your point. There are different kinds of cleft sentences. Some begin with it, look like this. You've got it, the verb to be, and the emphasized part. Then you usually say that, who, or which, and the rest of the sentence. Here's some examples. It is climate change that concerns most scientists. It was the lack of funding that caused the project to fail. And it is young people who are most affected by unemployment. So it stresses. Sometimes you begin a cleft sentence with the word what. What plus a clause plus the verb to be and then the emphasized part. Examples. What many people fail to see is long-term consequence. What students need most is personalized feedback. Okay, some it cleft sentences. It is education that holds the key to long-term economic growth. It is education that. It is social media that has changed the way people interact. You could say it in the past. It was the lack of funding that led to the failure of the project. It was during the pandemic that remote learning became widespread. It is, and you could use who or which instead of that. It is young adults who are most influenced by advertising. And it is developing countries which suffer the most from climate change. So each sentence emphasizes your point, and your point is at the end. Here's some what cleft sentences. What is important, worrying, or surprising is. What is important to understand is the long-term impact of this decision. What is surprising is how quickly the situation escalated. So you've got the phrase at the beginning and then your main point at the end. What many people fail to realize is, you hear this a lot, what many people fail to realize is that job satisfaction often matters more than salary. What this shows, proves, or highlights is, what this highlights is the urgent need for government action. What matters most is ensuring equal access to education. What cleft sentences with emphasis of your main point. Here's an education example. I will not read the question. Here's the first body paragraph. It is the emphasis on academic subjects that many supporters believe prepares students for future careers and intellectual development. Health. It is the government's ability to influence public policy that makes its role in promoting health so essential. Technology and education. It is the flexibility of online learning that appeals most to working professionals and students with busy schedules. So we've got it, cleft sentences, what, cleft sentences. It is parental involvement that plays the most crucial role in a child's academic success. It was the unequal distribution of resources that led to widespread public dissatisfaction. What makes this issue particularly challenging is the lack of clear government policy. And what many people overlook is the long-term impact of plastic pollution on marine ecosystems. So we've looked at good, strong grammatical structures for topic sentences, the most challenging being inversion, but also cleft sentences to emphasize and stress your main point. All right, so I hope this little video has been useful for you. If you liked it, please click like and subscribe below. I do have courses available. The link is below also. And I'll see you next time.